All right, Bulls and Bears, welcome back to another report. We've got a lot to get into today. This will be my first report for February 2026, and hope everyone's doing well. And January's behind us already. We hope the year is off to a good start for you. I know some people are doing really good, just judging based on the comments that I see in this channel. And it's kind of like the overall population, right? 7 in 10 people kind of struggling with inflation, the cost of living. About 3 in 10, the other 30%, are doing fairly well. And if you go up to the top 10%, they're doing better than ever. I mean, the wealth divide in this country has never been greater than it is today as far as the wealthy versus the poor and the middle class. It's getting wider and wider all the time. It seems like the money system right now, it benefits people that already have a lot of money. In other words, it takes money to make money. So if you already have money, it's going to be easier for you to make money. And that may be simple and obvious to some people, but sometimes it's not so obvious and simple. So think about it. It's hard to start from the ground up. Rags to riches stories where someone is broke and they work their way out of poverty, those are very few and far between. The greater majority of the success stories are people that are already pretty financially well off. They already have money to invest. And then you see about all their investments, what they invested in. But then you look back and you say, wow, they had money to invest from the very beginning. It's not like they worked at McDonald's and all of a sudden they had a good investment, then they took that investment, then they doubled and tripled it. Most of the time, the stories I've read and the research I've done with most millionaires and billionaires has been they were already multi-millionaires. Pretty much every billionaire that I've looked at or studied and looked at their history, read their books, they were already a multi-millionaire or at least a millionaire, right? So it's easier for somebody to go from 1 million to a billion versus coming from making a salary of 20,000 and having no savings to a million, right? It's easier to make that huge jump from a million to a billion than it is from, to say, somebody making minimum wage to a million. Does that make sense? But that's the system is set up like that. So those with access to funds are more likely to make more money from those funds. And you can actually borrow your way into wealth. I know many people that have done it. If it weren't for getting my first home loan, I would not have any homes right now. It took borrowing money to actually gain wealth and gain equity and to get properties. So a lot of people that are afraid to go into debt, sometimes you're shooting yourself into the foot. Now, of course, we have to look at the big picture. We don't want to buy at the peak of a bubble. You don't want to buy, for example, if you would have bought in 2007 in the housing market, it took you a few years to get back to where you were when you bought because prices went down for several years. And it was like 2012, 2013, depending on your area, but right around that time when home prices finally recovered and got back to where they were at the peak before prices started coming down. Late 2007, early 2008 is when they started coming down. So timing is very important, but overall, it's just inflation and higher prices going forward, folks. So we're going to look at rents today. We're going to talk about the cost of a Super Bowl party and the food. And some of you may be scratching your head right now. Why are we talking about the Super Bowl, folks? Whether or not you like the Super Bowl or not, you can't deny the fact of how popular it is. Last year, I've got the stats pulled up here. Last year, 127 million U.S. households watched the Super Bowl. Or people, not households, people. And in the United States, there's about 340 million people, and 267 million of those 340 million are adults. So when you look at it, it's almost half of the people watch the Super Bowl. Right? And there's people out there that I know that don't even like football. And they watch the Super Bowl just because it's such a big event. Some people just watch it for the entertainment, for the halftime show. But anyways, we're going to talk about the cost of the Super Bowl and the food and what people are doing. And we're going to talk about the players. How much are these players making, right? So again, you may be thinking, what does this have to do with sports? What does this channel have to do with sports? Folks, there's people out there that spend thousands of dollars every year on sports. whether playing sports, going to different tournaments, watching sports, going to the games, buying the gear, right? Buying the merchandise of their favorite teams or players. It's pretty fascinating. So whether or not you're into sports doesn't matter. The fact that people spend so much money on it and are that obsessed with sports, I think it's something we need to look at. So we're going to dive into that a little bit here. Also, rents coming down. And we're going to look at the landlord's point of view on rising rents and why they raise the rents. And yes, there's some greed in there, but a lot of times it's necessity because their costs are going up as well. That's right. Landlords are not immune to higher cost of living and inflation. They're seeing higher taxes, higher maintenance costs, and it could actually get worse here in 2026. Now, there's some deflationary and some inflationary forces that are going to be kind of going against each other as far as rents go and the cost of housing, right? So we're going to look at both and try to weigh that out and see which way things might actually end up going. But first, let's go ahead and take a look. Let's start right here. And we have the data out now through the end of the year 2025 for different types of products in different categories for inflation, right? So we look at non-alcoholic beverages here. Well, actually, no, let's start right here. Meat and poultry, it's going to be in the pink graph here. And we'll get into the other stuff here, but we've got the year numbers here starting from 2020, of course, 2020, up 4.7%. 2021, that was the worst. Year over year was up 12% from 2020, 7.4% in 2022. Now, some people may say the change is great. This is great. It dropped from 12% down to 7%. Well, keep in mind, this 7% that you're seeing here for 2022, that's on top of the 12% from the previous year, which is on top of the 4% from the previous year. So cumulative, you're looking close to 25%, right? So that's the big thing that I think a lot of people miss with the inflation numbers, right? Declining inflation may seem good when they talk about it. They present it as a great thing. Oh, look, inflation dropped. Well, not really. The cost of living went up, right? So inflation, if it drops to 1%, that sounds good on the surface, but keep in mind that's 1% on top of the previous year's number. And the previous year's number was on top of the previous year's numbers, right? Year over year means every year you're looking at the new number. I mean, most of you know this, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people think that's great news when they say inflation went down compared to the previous year. All right, it's not good, folks. If things are too expensive, you don't want any inflation. You want zero. And in fact, you may want deflation. But really, we don't really see deflation too often with the system of money right now because it's so easy to borrow money. It's so easy to take out loans. It's so easy to get further into debt that you're just going to see inflation positive to infinity unless somebody, changes the way money's being loaned out because debt keeps on increasing, prices keep on increasing. When banks quit loaning out money, that's when you'll see prices go down. There's a few different areas or a few different instances where that's not the case. And we'll talk about those here in a few minutes. For example, rents are going down right now. People could still borrow money and people are going further into debt, but rents are a little bit different. Rents are not so much based on people borrowing money. It's based on people's ability to pay that rent each month out of their account, out of their checking account or savings account, right? People aren't borrowing money to pay rent. Some are taking out balance transfers to pay the rent, which that's the end of the rope or the last resort type of thing. Hopefully if somebody does that, they're probably close to filing bankruptcy if they're taking out balance transfers to pay rent. Hopefully not too many people are doing that. A lot of people are taking out balance transfers just to pay for the monthly food bills, to pay for utilities though. But let's get into the numbers here though. These numbers are actually not good, folks. Up 4% from 2024 for meat, poultry, fish, and eggs. Fruits and vegetables, not as much, 0.4%, but it's still up. Right, on top of the previous year's numbers, cumulative, when you could see, if you add all these numbers together, how much prices have increased for each of these categories. Now let's move on to a different category. And by the way, Axios put these out here. Now we're looking at non-alcoholic beverages and then alcoholic beverages. Similar, right? 2022 was the peak for these categories as well. But you could see 2025 compared to the prior year, 5.1% for non-alcoholic beverages. Right, so all of your sodas and your fizzy drinks, your carbonated beverages. Alcoholic beverages up 2.1%. So the Super Bowl this year versus the Super Bowl party last year, or just food in general, is up. But on the topic of the Super Bowl, since that's coming up, let's talk about it. Even if you're not into sports at all, it's very fascinating. It's very interesting how people love to watch the Super Bowl and sports in general. I mean, there's people out there, and I've said this before, people out there barely scraping by, living paycheck to paycheck, willing to put aside whatever the ticket prices are now, depending on your team. It could be hugely different, right? Los Angeles Lakers tickets for basketball are much different than let me think of a different team here. Houston Rockets tickets, right? Not that they're a bad team, but the prices are a lot different, right? Different markets. But the way people are willing to spend money on sports, it's really, really fascinating. And let's take a look now. The average, actually not even the average. Let's talk about the entry salary, the entry level salary for an NFL starter or begin rookie. Let's just say rookie, the first year in the NFL. For the 2025 through 2026 season, the minimum base salary for a rookie based on being in an active roster is $840,000. This amount increases based on experience, rising to over $960,000 a year for players with 1 year of experience or more. Practice squad players earn a minimum of $13,750 per week. The minimum salary, the absolute minimum for a 53-man roster team, this is if you're on the team, even if you're on the sidelines, $840,000. Even bench warmers, folks, are making over $800,000 a year in the NFL. And people, and I'm not criticizing people that do this, people spend money to go watch these people throw the ball around and pass and tackle each other, right? It's fun. It's entertainment. But to me, it's just really interesting how much people love watching it. And I'm not saying I'm above this. I watch it. I watch the Super Bowl. It's entertainment. I watch movies. Pretty much any sort of entertainment you're taking part in is you're making someone else that's already wealthy even wealthier. If you play video games, the designer of that video game, the company behind that video game is a multi-million-dollar company in most cases. You're giving your money to a multi-million-dollar company. Same thing with sports. You buy a car, you buy an auto. You're making the manufacturer of the auto money. And of course, if you're buying used, the manufacturer doesn't really see that. It's the used car dealer. And you get the point, though. You're usually giving your money to someone that's already has a lot of money, right? And of course, not in all cases. I mean, some cases you've got a small-time car dealer, car lot where it's different. But the point is, people are giving their money to people that already have a lot of money or a lot more money than they have in most cases. And that's true everywhere you go. The grocery store, right? And not all businesses succeed, but you get the point. But back to the NFL thing here. Players drafted in the first round receive significantly higher multi-year guaranteed contracts. For example, top draft picks may have contracts worth $10 million. And sometimes that's over multiple years. But this could equal to several $1,000,000 a year for someone just starting in the league. And the reason I want to tie this all together is because, folks, people are hosting Super Bowl parties, watching the Super Bowl, and paying higher costs for food this year, higher costs for drinks. So to host a Super Bowl party this year is more than it was last year. And if you go back to 2020, we're up about close to 30% for all the different types of things that people get for the Super Bowl. The beverages, the food, the snacks, etc. Your cable TV bill is higher than it was back then. Your electric bill, which is part of the picture because you're watching it on a electronic screen, is higher than what it was. And that's going up each year, right? So we're not seeing many things go down in price. We are seeing a couple things go down, a couple areas. One is rent, right? So let's make the transition to talking about the Super Bowl and talk about rents here dropping. Here, bring up this chart for you. And let's talk about the nationwide median rent, folks. Now, it's 353. We already have the January numbers out. This is out of Apartment List, by the way. So the January numbers are already out, and we're down actually to about a 4-year low in rents. All right, so the month of January saw rents equal to about what we saw in right around March 2022. So almost a 4-year low in rents. And you can see over the past few years, it goes up and down. Right, it goes up and down. But if you compare that to prior to 2020, we're still up significantly, right? Coming into 2021, we were at, and this is for all bedroom sizes and averaged out, right? So this could vary from city to city, but this is average across the U.S. for most major metropolitan areas. 1,143 is where we were at. So we're still way above. And if you're looking at the chart, it's pretty simple to see. We're still way above where we were before 2021. And remember what happened in 2021. That was the year of the rent moratoriums, the eviction moratoriums, right? Landlords could not evict people. And we told you back then this was going to be highly inflationary. And we were right. But even I underestimated how sticky it would be. I mean, rents haven't really come down a lot compared to the increase that we saw starting in 2021, right? We knew there was going to be big inflationary forces in the housing market with the rent moratorium, but nobody, I think, expected it to just stay at this level, all right? And yes, it's come down a bit, but still, it's way above, again, prior to 2021. And again, let's go back to the dynamics of a rent moratorium or an eviction moratorium. When you're a landlord and you have, let's say you're a big investment firm, you've got 100 properties, right? And that's not that big because there's some with thousands, but let's just say you have 100 properties, right? A good chunk of portfolio in real estate, 100 properties. Half of those people can't pay the rent, and you're not allowed to evict them. What are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and take the loss? No, you're going to look at your bottom line. You're going to say, wow, I'm losing this much money because I have half the people not paying rent. I better raise my rent on all the other people. So the people that were the people that were paying their tent, let me repeat this. Let me rephrase this. The tenants that were paying their rent they got punished. The tenants that were paying their rent, they're the ones that saw the increases because the landlords had to get the money from somewhere. So what do? They raised their rents across the board to make up for the people that weren't paying their rents, right? So that way they can still try to pay all their monthly bills. And I think that's where it began. I don't think that. I know that. That's where the big increases began. Now, you could say it began way before that because rents kind of were going up anyways, but that's where the huge increase in rents began. And that's when a lot of landlords began to realize that, hey, I could raise my rents and most people are actually just going to pay it. Yeah, there'll be a few people that can't pay it. A few people will move out and go look for a cheaper place. But overall, if landlord A is raising the rents and landlord B, C, D, and E are raising the rents, people aren't going to have much of a choice. They're not going to have many other options, not many other places to go to. So the landlords, I think they realized this. They took advantage of it. Now, that's not the whole picture. I mean, there's still inflation with landlords. Take a listen to this, and one landlord is going to explain the decision to raise the rents and how the tenant kind of lost out, or maybe not. Take a listen. Here's right here, landlord. Take a listen to this little story.
I raised the rent at one of my long-term tenants' single-family rentals, and well, they showed me. They moved out immediately. Follow me inside. I'll explain. All right, don't jump on me yet. Here's how it all went down. So we basically started renting to them a few years ago for about $2,100. What we should have been doing the entire time is increasing their rent a little bit each year, every time we renew the lease. That's what normally people would do. After a few years, we offered them a new lease with a $100 increase, bringing it up to $2,200. Now, that doesn't even cover the jump in our expenses over the past 3 years. Unfortunately, they seem to be pretty upset by this and decided they were moving. Drop a comment if you think we screwed up or if the tenant screwed up a pretty sweet deal for themselves. Okay, spoiler alert, here's how it all wrapped up. We found that this place vacant should rent for about $2,800 these days. So how did this work out? Well, we have a new tenant moving in just a few days at $2,600, meaning we have an overall increase of $400 over the last tenant we had renting here, and they are thrilled with the deal that they're getting. If you want to learn more about rental properties.
So pretty interesting. This tenant that was renting from this guy right here, for this landlord, didn't like the $100 a month increase.
After a few years.
And moved out. But the landlord found out that they could have rented this place out for much, much more, like hundreds of dollars more than they would have gotten from the tenant that moved out. So in this case, the landlord was the winner by raising the rent. Now, the tenant that moved out, they probably thought they socked it to the landlord. They probably thought they showed the landlord, they showed him. But really, the landlord ended up getting the actual market value or the market rate for the rental once these people moved out. And hopefully the people that moved out got a better deal somewhere else. Who knows? Maybe they moved back in with family. Maybe they moved to a cheaper area. But the fact that they moved out tells us that they did find a better deal somewhere. But you could see this situation because this guy said that the increase of $100 didn't even cover the increase that they saw from the past 3 years. So believe it or not, there are landlords out there not even keeping up with market rates, not raising the rent as much as they should. Then on the other hand, you've got some raising rents way more than they should because they know they can. Because they know they can. They have leverage. Right? When rents are high, when home prices are high, that's better for landlords, right? A lot of people that own properties right now, they are really hoping that home prices don't go down because the higher the home prices are, the more they know their tenants are stuck in their rental property, right? Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Now, here's a video that shows a landlord calling their tenant to tell them about their rent increase. The tenant doesn't like it. Take a listen. I almost think this is scripted because who would put this on video, one? And two, you really should put this in writing. You should put it in writing. I mean, if you watch any legal show, any court show, I mean, writing is where it should be at. So I doubt this is actually, I'll let you decide here. Take a listen.
I wanted to discuss the rent for next year.
What about it?
I just wanted to remind you that it goes up $75 starting next month.
What the Why?
It's that standard yearly rent increase. The rent's supposed to go up 3% each year based on our agreement.
No. I didn't sign up for that.
You did, actually. It's in the lease agreement that you signed.
That's bullshit. I'm not paying another $75 every month.
We discussed this before you even moved in. You told me that you read the part where it says that the rent goes up each year. You said you were okay with it. You shouldn't have rented the place if you weren't okay with the terms.
Nah, that's not happening. It's either you're going to keep the rent the same or you're not getting anything at all.
If you breach the lease agreement like that, I'll have to ask you to find another place to live.
The that's supposed to mean?
It means that I'll have no choice but to evict you.
You know what? You.
All right, it was all beeped out, folks. I think that was scripted. I wouldn't think that a landlord would be silly enough to record that and even to approach their tenant like that, right? You don't want to get into a verbal argument with somebody over rent, right? Because breaking the news to somebody is not always easy to do. So it's better just to send them a letter. But where's this tenant going to go? Does he or she, sound like a he, have a place to go that's cheaper? Because before you curse out your landlord and hang up on them, whatever, you better make sure you have a cheaper place to go to and make sure you're able to move out. A lot of people can't move because of health reasons, because of their job. They don't have the time off to move because moving is not just a one-day thing unless you're single with hardly any personal belongings. Moving is not simple. I've done it a few times, and every time I've done it, I'm like, ooh, I'm getting older. My back. Filling up this U-Haul truck every time I move seems to get harder. Folks, what do you think about that? Also, take a listen to this. Here is a illustration, cartoon, if you will, of the big picture scenario with big landlords, corporate landlords, Wall Street landlords, if you will, and what they do as far as vacant units. You would think vacant units means they're going to drop their price. Not necessarily. In some cases, they'd rather have a vacant unit than to drop the price. Because when they drop the price, that comes with consequences, right? Take a listen to this.
Here's the uncomfortable truth most landlords won't say out loud. Those empty units aren't a mistake. They're part of the strategy. Ever wonder why landlords would rather leave units empty than drop the price? They'd rather keep units empty at $2,000 a month than fill every unit at $1,600. The moment they drop the price, it resets what's called the market rate for the whole building. The bank that gave the landlord their loan sees it, and suddenly the whole building is worth less on paper. When the Federal Reserve raises rates, landlords' mortgage payments go up, sometimes by hundreds or thousands per month, and they pass that cost straight to you. Your landlord's insurance bill in Florida or California might have jumped from $8,000 annually to $18,000. And guess who's covering that difference? Big corporate landlords and investment firms now own huge chunks of rental housing, especially in cities. We're talking companies that own 10,000 units, 50,000 units, sometimes more. They need that cash flow to cover their mortgage and property taxes right away. But a corporation managing 10,000 units across multiple cities, they can afford to let 100 units sit empty for months, even a year, if it protects the rent level across their whole portfolio. Big players can absorb short-term losses that would destroy smaller owners. They use that advantage to keep prices high, even when it seems irrational. This matters to you because it means the landlord on the other side of your lease might not even need your rent check this month. Meanwhile, you're desperately searching for anything under $1,800 that doesn't require sharing a bathroom with 3 strangers or commuting 2 hours each way to work. The power dynamic is completely lopsided. You need a place to live right now, and they know it. People are sleeping in cars, crashing on couches, spending 60% of their income on rent. It's an investment vehicle first and shelter second. Landlords and investment firms aren't just providing housing. They're managing assets that need to appreciate in value, show strong returns to shareholders, and maintain attractive financials for refinancing. When a corporation's quarterly earnings call matters more than whether families can afford rent, the system breaks down. You end up with empty buildings during a housing shortage. The incentives are completely misaligned with what society actually needs. The system isn't designed to help you. It's designed to extract maximum value from you. Every month you're choosing between saving for the future and having a decent place to live right now. They use that power to keep rents high even when units sit empty. Housing has become an investment asset first and shelter second. And you're living through the consequences every month when you transfer half your paycheck to someone else whose biggest concern is maintaining their property's valuation for the next refinancing deal. So here's the real question. Is this system efficiently distributing housing to people who need it, or has it been optimized to extract wealth from renters while buildings sit empty during a crisis? Drop a comment with your city and the most outrageous rent increase you've seen.
Right. Interesting graphic, right? Illustration. Very interesting. There can be vacancies, and vacancies have been rising over the past few years. In fact, we're seeing the highest vacancy level that we've seen in over 10 years. I'd have to get the exact number, but the vacancy rate right now is pretty high. And maybe we'll get into that in the next report. But even with vacancies, landlords may not drop the rent because that's going to bring the comparables down. You understand? Made perfect sense, right? So they'd, in some cases, almost rather keep a vacant property than lower the price. In some cases, not all cases. Now, in some cases, it's just a small landlord that's only got a few rentals. Maybe it's their only rental. So they're not worried about comparables because they don't have any other rentals, and they're just going to go ahead and drop the price until somebody moves in, right? That's the case in some situations, right? But in the case where they have a big portfolio, they may just rather have a bunch of vacancies than drop the rents, right? So pretty interesting, folks. Hope everybody liked this report today. We kind of jumped around a little bit, but it all has to do with the U.S. economy, your money, whether it's people spending money on entertainment, Super Bowl parties with the higher costs of food, and how much these players make, and how people still choose entertainment, whether it's sports, whether it's watching a movie, music, video games. People still spend a lot of money just to be entertained because life can be pretty monotonous, right? If you're just working 9 to 5, and sometimes an 8-hour day turns into like a 10 or 12-hour day between getting up, getting ready for work, packing a lunch, the commute, sometimes taking 30 or 60 minutes without pay in the middle of the day, what's called a lunch break. That extends the day where you're not just at home or doing what you want. Hopefully you are working at home, but you get the point. A lot of people are just stressed for time. stuck in traffic sometimes an hour each way. I've been there. I've done that. And by the time the day's done, you're just beat, and you want to relax. You want to play a video game. You want to watch sports. You just want to sit back and veg on the couch, as my sister used to say. She wants to veg. She did a little too much vegging, but it's another story for another time. Everybody, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about all this: the rents, the sports, entertainment costs, the players' salaries, all that. You're going to be watching the game. Let me know. Drop a comment. What do you think about the rents too? And we've got a lot more to get into this week. Please make sure you subscribe. Keep this channel alive. Thank you very much, everybody. Talk to you then. Peace.